Greetings and welcome to Outlaw Gamer Radio, the official podcast of OutlawGamers.com. This is the show where we live to play and play to live. I'm Brent Adams, joined by a man who thinks dual play is a paid service that can only be rendered legally in international waters or the state of Nevada. Mr. Lauren Baumgarten. Lauren!
You are a disturbed man, is what you are. You are a disturbed man.
Indeed I am, but that doesn't make me wrong. And we're going to get to, I was going to try to make some sort of segue about how I wasn't wrong about Tom Clancy's The Division getting delayed to 2016.
Why does it have to be a segue or a joke?
But I never, ever made that prediction because I had faith in this game, and it ended up being false hope. My faith misplaced in this company and this game. And that brings us to the first story in the garage. Welcome, Lauren, to Outlaw Gamer Radio.
Well, thank you, Brent. It's nice to be here. You know, you have a nice garage, if I may say so.
If you could actually see what my real garage looks like, you would realize what a horrifying untruth you have just spoken.
I'm glad that that's the direction you took it in and didn't choose to go in the euphemism direction.
Yeah, well, it could have gone a lot worse. Which is basically what happened to my garage. My garage went a lot worse.
We have some good stuff in the garage this week. However, what we're beginning with is not so good, and it comes as no real shock, I guess. That is the delay of Tom Clancy's Division is being delayed ostensibly into Q1 2016.
Yeah, well, what they're saying, although there's a little confusion about this because they say that it's going to be fourth fiscal quarter, 2000,
right, Q1 calendar quarter of 2016.
Yeah, 2016, which I guess do you say it's the fiscal year if it ends in the calendar year? So like if your fiscal year runs April to let's stop talking about this part of the story. Let's get to the real business at hand.
Which is that not only is the game delayed, Brent, but I have to tell you, man, I have worsening fears about this game big time, and it's starting to feel a lot like Watch Dogs.
I think that's exactly what it feels like. It feels a lot like when they announced this game, when they showed this game off, they basically had nothing. And that they are... It seems like they kind of threw a dart, said, here's what the game's going to be, here's the feature set, and now they're scrambling to try and, sort of build up to, wherever the dart landed. I'm not as angry about this as like Batman Arkham Knight, as an example. When Batman Arkham Knight got delayed the first time, I was pissed. I was really righteously angry about it, because it seemed reasonable to me that it was going to come out when they originally said it was, which was fall last year. And so the delay really stung. This delay does not sting, and I suppose that means on some level, subconsciously or otherwise, I never really expected to see it this year anyway, or something like that. I don't know, but I'm not angry about this. It felt more like a confirmation of fear.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brent. It does feel like a confirmation, and I'm sure listeners are out there kind of going, what kind of 180 did both of these guys do on this game? But it is not only a confirmation, but like I said, I have growing fear over the quality of the game in general, and so my excitement has significantly...
It is an Ubisoft title.
Yeah, and that's why, to be honest with you. I mean, after what they've done with Assassin's Creed, which we're going to talk a little bit about later, what they did with Watch Dogs, what they did with The Club...
Yeah. They got problems. Problems.
I'm not convinced that they know what they're doing when it comes to making open world games, honestly. And so I've become my excitement for this game is waning, and basically they're going to have to convince me that they didn't fuck it up. Basically, when this game is ready to come out, and it will take some convincing, I gotta say. So this is unfortunate news, but Brent, there's a lot of great stuff this year, and I'm honestly, surprisingly so, I'm not upset about it.
No, I'm not either, and maybe it is because there's just other really great stuff to look forward to. But in any case, we're just gonna have to keep our eye on this, and I suppose that maybe the one positive thing that we can say about it is that maybe Ubisoft is sort of waking up to the fact that they have a problem that needs to be addressed. But we'll get to that after this story. Because this story is about a really cool convergence between things that I love coming together, even though it's based on a video game property that I'm not the hugest fan of. But that is the analog edition of Crysis, which is, as you may have surmised, a board game. And there's a Kickstarter running for this right now. They've built a prototype, but they need to go to manufacturing, and so they need they're asking for $95,000, I believe. They're currently sitting, as we record this, at $28,000 to enter their manufacturing run for Crysis Analog Edition, which is a tactical board game for 2 to 8 players, as you've probably surmised also, based on the Crysis video game. Anyway, I love video games. I love board games. And board games based on video games are okay by me. Lauren, since you are a fan of Crysis, I'm kind of interested to know what you think about this.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like I want to see a little bit more gameplay to kind of understand how it's going to play out.
That's actually a good point, though, because, and this is something that I was thinking watching their Kickstarter video. Like, their Kickstarter video shows you, it kind of shows you, like, here's how you'll set up your cards, like, as an example, like your weapon, like whatever card you're using, for your weapon, your assault rifle or whatever. It shows you kind of, swiping through and picking one, but then it cuts to video game footage of a guy getting shot, and then you'll kind of see like 2 game pieces coming to close proximity to each other, like, uh-oh, they're facing off, and then it goes to game footage.
And they kind of talk about like giving you the first-person shooter experience in the board game, and do you think I was making?
It's a lot more exciting to show the video game footage than it would be to show 2 chubby guys rolling dice and moving the little figurines around. But
you
I
thought
would
I
like
was
to have seen an actual
joke
game
about
played out.
Right, and I would too, man. I'm not kidding. You thought I was making a joke about the trailer not having enough actual gameplay footage,
but
and maybe being pre-rendered or something. But No, it's an interesting property to make an analog edition of, and I love the idea. I just would like to see a little more gameplay, but I know that this is going to be very interesting to a lot of people out there. Of all the possible properties you could make into a board game, I don't know that Crysis would be initially high on my list.
Right.
But I'm all for it, man, and I think it's an interesting endeavor, and I encourage people to check it out and just see if it's something that interests them.
I would have said the same thing about the Hitman series. I would never have imagined that Hitman would translate into a board game, but that's essentially what Hitman Go is.
Hitman Go is, yeah.
It's basically just a board game. But so you never know. I've got Donkey Kong Jenga sitting upstairs right now as a Christmas present that I haven't got the opportunity to crack open yet and play with friends. But you just never know. You never know what's going to really, really work. I'm not saying that Donkey Kong Jenga is really going to work, because how the hell would I know? But the point is, the box really looks nice, and it's turned into a great conversation piece, if not an actual fun piece of board game entertainment.
Right.
Moving on.
So this is interesting, Brent. So Ubisoft announced their next Assassin's Creed, and trust me, that's not the interesting part.
No.
This Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
That works on 2 levels.
The Assassin's Creed Syndicate, the debut trailer came out this last week for their game that's coming out. I believe it's October. I don't know. Maybe they announced 3 Assassin's Creeds, and they're coming out like sequentially in October, December, and February. I don't know. But
right.
This one takes place in, is it mid-1800s London? Actually, it's a setting that is somewhat interesting if it weren't, in the Assassin's Creed universe. But and the reaction we saw, Brent, we saw on
it now,
dude, it deserves it. Although I will say that the one thing I will give them in this case is that it is a single player only game again, and so they're right. Not doing a multiplayer ostensibly so they could focus on the single player. That's too ostensibly for those of you that are playing drinking games. So they could focus on the single player, but the reaction was extremely lukewarm, if not cold, on the website. But what I thought was interesting, Brent, was this video.
It's okay. If you don't like this Assassin's Creed, there'll be another one next year for you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What I thought was interesting, Brent, was watch Ubisoft own up to the mess that was Assassin's Creed Unity. And Brent, I wanted to get your take. I know what my take is on this, but there was conversation about this on the website about whether or not this feels sincere. And I'm curious to hear what you think about sort of what you think about the sincerity of them owning up to their mistakes on Unity. Do you think it's genuine, or do you think it's a marketing ploy?
I think that it's a lot like politicians. I think that it's easy for people to pay lip service to something or to sort of perform an apology, but there's a difference between that and taking action to correct the problem. And I mean, I can't speak for politicians everywhere, but certainly in the United States, politicians are really long on apologies and really short on actions to make up for their shortcoming or their missteps or whatever. And that was kind of what was going on in my head. Is I was like, this is like listening to a politician apologize for cheating on their wife or something like that, right? It's easy to, although I want to say that I think that the people who are actually being interviewed, the developers in question, I have no doubt that they're sincere when they talk about things like, reading reviews for Assassin's Creed Unity was like, like their kid getting called fat or something like that. It kind of breaks
Absolutely.
your heart to
after years of work.
Yeah, to have something that you've worked on and devoted so much of yourself and your time to have it be reviewed with all the ferocity that the internet is capable of. I don't doubt that they're sincere in saying that was unpleasant. But there's a difference between them acknowledging that and them being allowed by the culture and structure of Ubisoft to not make that mistake again. And so that's the thing, is that in a sense, I wonder if the ability for them to not repeat this mistake I wonder if it's even in their control.
Yeah, that's a good question, Brandon. It's a good point you bring up about the culture of Ubisoft. My take on this was that, and I agree with you that clearly, and it's totally understandable. And honestly, I think it's a great perspective for all of us to see about what it feels like to have your work critiqued. And especially when you put years into it, to have it critiqued and what that feels like. I think that's interesting. I don't know that a marketing piece is the appropriate place to do it. And right. I feel like while the developers themselves that were portrayed within, I believe were very sincere, something about the whole thing feels disingenuous to me when it occurs as a marketing piece alongside the announcement of their next game, clearly with the intent of fostering sales of their next property. Even if you, Brent, were to sort of let go of what you pointed out, the difference between apology and action, even if you took that out of the equation, and this had been an apology that was made several months ago, even just as an apology, I think it feels more genuine.
Being a separate thing from, oh, and by the way, the next Assassin's Creed is coming out, which presumably the messaging here is, we know we fucked up, but we won't do it next time. Pinky swear. Right,
and there's something about it being part of a marketing push like that. And it's always, I mean, there's no question, had they done it 6 months ago, Brent, that it would still be PR, right? It's damage control, it's brand saving the brand. But there's something that feels that makes it feel even more disingenuous when it clearly is attached to the launching of their next title. And so, how can one help but feel like, it's nothing more than a marketing piece? Yeah.
Well,
I mean, absolutely.
It's definitely not as sincere as rage quitting Twitter, which I hear is the thing to do now. But
for some developers,
I think that you're right. I think that there is certainly. I mean, it's just a matter of being savvy. I mean, we're not idiots. We understand that Ubisoft is a corporation that wants to convince us to hand over our money in exchange for video game experiences that they're going to provide. And I don't think that even if it is just a marketing thing. Well, okay, let's take that off the table. It's just a marketing thing. That's it. Okay, that's the only advantage to doing this is to try and mend some sort of injury in the relationship between this company and its customers. So, just take if out of the equation. This is a marketing thing. But that doesn't mean that that in and of itself does not mean that it's bad or insincere, or that we shouldn't take it into account in moving forward, acknowledging that it's marketing. But I think that the real question comes down to, are they going to do more than just apologize for it in this video? Are they actually going to change things in how they do these video games to try to avoid some of this stuff moving forward? Are they going to keep us appraised of what changes they're making in order to continue to rebuild confidence in their company and in the Assassin's Creed franchise? So those are the things that I'm really kind of curious about. I'm really curious to see if there's follow through with this. Is there more marketing videos showing us, whatever it is that they're going to do? And then ultimately, when Assassin's Creed Syndicate comes out, are we going to find that it does not have the same bugs and things that Unity was
right as the previous game? Yeah, I don't know, Brent. I mean, I got to say, when it comes to the Assassin's Creed series, I kind of feel like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 17 times, shame on me. That's kind of how I feel about those games.
Admittedly, not everybody is as jaded about that series as you and I are.
That's because not everybody was dumb enough to keep buying the games, even though we didn't really like them. I kept buying the games for what I wanted it to be, and it never has been.
That is exactly my problem too. Exactly.
Yeah, and so I stopped buying them now. It does remind me, Brent, real quick. I want to interject something here that I keep forgetting to mention, and that is, I bought. This is not completely off topic, but I bought a Far Cry T-shirt from the Ubi Workshop.
I got to be honest with you. This feels pretty far off topic, but keep going.
It's not. It's Ubi. There was Ubi in there.
Oh, thank you. Write it down.
It's a PSA for our listeners. I will tell you, I bought this T-shirt. The iron, there was a cool iron-on patch or whatever on the front of it. No. It's completely gone from the T-shirt within 2 months. I mean, just completely came off. Yeah. And I have tried multiple times to contact Ubisoft. I have written a review, which was not posted.
No, really?
A negative review, and I wrote them about the negative review. Also not posted. So I just wanted to share a PSA with people. If you're ever out there looking at the Ubi Workshop and looking at the clothes there, I highly, highly recommend you do not buy them because they are of very poor quality. And so please learn from my mistake. Back on track, Brent.
Let's move on and talk about something hopefully less depressing. We've got a second episode of the Arkham Insider from Rocksteady, developers of Batman Arkham Knight, entitled Let's Play Dual Play, which details the dual play feature of Batman Arkham Knight, and you get to see that shown off in gameplay, get some commentary over it, kind of explaining what's going on, how it's going to work with the traditional combat system vis-a-vis your combo meter and special attacks and things like that. The bottom line, I suppose, is that you are going to be able to work with a AI compatriot, in this case Nightwing, but it could be Robin or Catwoman, whatever, Batgirl, and we see Batman and Nightwing taking on a room full, I don't know, I mean, few dozen bad guys, a lot more
bad guys than we're used to seeing.
And you see how it kind of allows you to seamlessly switch between Batman and Nightwing while maintaining your combo meter through both characters, and how you can use that to build up to these super duper takedowns that involve both Batman and Nightwing taking out the same guy and that kind of stuff. I think it's actually really, really cool, and it's just one of those things that I'm very interested to see how that feels within the story of Arkham Knight, because certainly it would sort of tend to make me think that you're going to be interacting with those characters through some kind of story stuff. Like you're going to hook up with Catwoman and you're going to be with her through a leg of the game as you're trying to figure something out that maybe she's involved with or knows something about, and then you're going to switch over to Nightwing or something like that. Like, I'm hoping that it's not just a I'm hoping it's just not like a Nightwing shows up, and as soon as you show up, like, okay, so I'm going to open this door, and there's going to be a big fight. You have a big fight, and then he's like, well, I'm off. Poosh, out the window he goes. I'm hoping that they really integrate this along with those side characters in a meaningful way through the story, because I just want to see that in terms of the game experience. It kind of feel like you're working alongside those people. I think that'd be kind of fun.
I agree. I was very pleasantly surprised by this, Brent. I mean, we knew about it. We didn't know the details. And it seemed to work seamlessly. In terms of the mechanics, it looks spot on. It does. It absolutely looks spot on, and I love it, and that's very reassuring. I have loved the opportunities we've had in the previous games to play as other characters. Yeah. So the opportunity to play as other characters, I think, is fantastic. I agree with you that I hope that it makes sense from a story standpoint. I would imagine it does. Like Catwoman in Arkham City. Like, it totally makes sense, like why you're playing Catwoman in that game. Right, absolutely, and I think it. I thought it looked dope, Brent. I thought it got me. It just now my excitement is really growing for Batman, and this only increased the excitement. I mean, to see what I really was intrigued by was just the massive amounts of enemies that were in that room, and I encourage people to go watch it. I'm getting super excited for this game, Brent, and I'm hoping I will be lost in it all summer long. I hope that your CPU is fixed in time for you to be lost in this game all summer long. Oh my God, don't talk about that. Too late. And we're back, heading into the clubhouse. Brent, I think you have a poll to share with us before we get into the topic this week. Always. Last week we were talking about the preservation of games and some of the issues surrounding that phenomena, and we asked the question, what's your solution to preserve games? In last place, with 10% of the vote, you said go back to selling physical media. 13% of you said change copyright law to force publishers' intellectual property into the public domain sooner. Third place, with 18% of the vote, was the pirates have already solved this problem. That was me. Second place with 21% of the vote was keep on selling them digitally. But the number one selection from the Outlaw Gamer audience with 39% was the industry needs to adopt some kind of standard to release end-of-life games. So that is what the majority of you said that you would like to see happen. And thank you very much for voting in that poll and for contributing your comments. We appreciate that very much. We're going to talk about, we're going the opposite end. From games that are end of life to games that are a mere 20 minutes away from being birthed into life. We're going to talk about The Witcher 3, which obviously is a highly anticipated release this week. But that's not to say that its release comes with no controversy, as Lauren will now elaborate. Indeed, Brent, there is controversy surrounding the release of The Witcher 3, a couple of different ones, actually. But we're going to focus in on a topic that has been burning up NeoGAF a little bit in Reddit, and that is a conversation about whether or not CD Projekt RED downgraded the graphics for The Witcher 3 since what was being shown in 2013. And the short answer is yes, they did. The short answer is yes. So there's an article we're going to link out to over on What If Gaming where they detail the situation a little bit. They link out to some of the conversations I referred to. And essentially you'll find, if you search the net at all, some side-by-side images where you can see fairly clearly that some of the graphical aspects of the game may have been downgraded, like particle effects and some of the dynamic lighting and so forth. This is not the first time we've seen this, Brent. Certainly one of the more high-profile games we've seen do this was the Watch Dogs. Watch Dogs had some amazing footage. I'm leery now that this is going to happen with The Division as well. One of the big arguments out there, and this was talked about on Outlaw Gamers, one of the big arguments out there is why is CD Projekt RED getting a pass on this? And I know there's going to be a lot of opinions on this. At the time of this recording, Brent, as you said, it's 20 minutes till the release of this game. We have members of the Outlaw Gamers Society who are already playing The Witcher 3 and have kind of chimed in a little bit on this conversation and alluded to the fact that it's the game is so high quality that a slight change in the graphics isn't that big of a deal. And I think this is partially what some people on the internet are upset about is why is CD Projekt RED getting a pass on this when so clearly they have downgraded some of the graphics from what was originally shown in 2013. Now, if this article, Brent, is to be believed, this article alludes to a member of the development team who shall remain nameless, in which he says essentially they had to pare down on what they were doing to be able to get parity between the consoles and the PC. And performance on the consoles. And he refers to one specific console, but he doesn't say which one has a lower specs and that they had to sort of design to a point. So this in and of itself, Brent, is an interesting conversation. Is it true? Did it happen? Is it happening industry-wide? Is it a trend? One of the things that I thought was the most interesting about the article, Brent, was at the end of the article, the author of the What If Gaming piece points out that in their recent trailer they released, the Witcher 3 trailer, Killing Monsters, at the very beginning of that trailer, they show a slide of the 50-plus awards they won at E3 2013. And I personally, Brent, think that is a line that they have crossed. It's one thing if you have to make changes to the game. Right. I understand the need to make changes to a game. Development is a process. It is not a static thing, and so it makes sense as you develop out the game. You make the world bigger, whatever. You make choices in gameplay. It might affect your ability to do some of the things you may have shown already, and that's fine. But to me, if you're going to use those awards that were won by a game that is different than it is now as your marketing, I think that crosses a line, Brent.
I agree with you. I mean, I think that it's certainly shady behavior. Although there's also that part of me that says, yeah, but who really pays attention to that anyway? I mean, who is buying The Witcher 3 because it won, some award at E3 2013 as opposed to...
Well, they put that stuff on there for a reason. I mean, that's... Well,
I agree with you. I mean,
it does subconsciously sort of make you think, oh, this won 50-plus awards it
must be good. Yeah, I mean, it's possible that some people pay a lot more attention to that than I do. I just for my own interest in the game, I don't even pay attention to that. So anyway, but having just acknowledged that, I agree with you that certainly it is disingenuous if they are sort of selling you the game on the basis of it having been vetted and won all these awards by these respected gaming outlets and reviewers and so forth, and the game that they played and the game that you're playing are different. And I think that it speaks to an issue that we've seen a lot, which is overpromising, underdelivering. It also speaks to how we review games and the fact that is changing, as we've covered on this show, and thinking about things like online games and how, when reviewers play those games, they're not playing where the servers are really being filled to capacity with gamers, and that changes the experience. All of those kinds of things I think are present, in the sort of the texture of this discussion. But
no pun intended.
But I think that man, I tell you, that's like 2 weeks in a row. Something's wrong. I got to go to the doctor. I can't finish the show. I got to go get myself checked out. That's too many.
You caught something, didn't you?
Yeah, obviously I have. Anyway, so for me, the whole downgrade thing on The Witcher, okay, fine. I guess that I feel it's a pretty practical thing. It's just a matter of what is a company the size of CD Projekt RED, what resources do they have to deliver this game onto 3 platforms? And I can't really fault them, which, according to this anonymous source, if you want to believe that this anonymous source is in fact a developer who worked on the game and knows what the hell they're talking about, the reason presented is that the company just did not have the resources to do it any other way. They did not have a way to deliver this game on these 3 platforms and optimize it to its fullest on each of them, which is what we would all love to see in a perfect world. But things being what they are, I think that they did the best job that they can. And I think that the reason that CD Projekt RED is getting a pass, to just sort of address that, is that I think that traditionally they've done right by gamers. Certainly, GOG.com has a lot of that's endeared CD Projekt RED to a lot of people in their no DRM approach to selling games and that kind of thing. So I think that there's enough kind of goodwill that has been built up over the years that people are willing to maybe give them the benefit of the doubt in this instance, as opposed to a company like Ubisoft, what we were talking about, where maybe people feel that they have been burned more than a few times now and are feeling a bit jaded. We don't have that. I don't think that we have that yet with CD Projekt RED.
So do they, I mean, do they get a pass? So one of the other, and this isn't necessarily what the focus of this discussion is, but one of the other issues that people had with The Witcher Wild Hunt is the season pass already being announced and released, and so it's, and I don't begrudge them that, of course, but it does certainly bring the feeling of some of what you have seen from what we perceive as the big bad larger companies right now. Right. They are releasing an SDK for mods. They are, of course, you alluded to GOG.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I'll talk about that in a second.
So they're releasing an SDK for mods. You talked about God and the GOG. God. You talked about God.
I didn't talk about God.
You talked about GOG and the DRM free ownership there, and also they're putting out a not insignificant amount of DLC for the game for free as well, moving forward. And so certainly it does have a different feel to it. But again, Brent, so part of, again, I have to go back to, so first of all, just to be clear, I couldn't be more excited to play this game, obviously.
I was going to say, bear in mind that none of this changes the fact that in 10 minutes, I will be leaving this show to go play this game.
God, we'll talk about that in a minute. Unfortunately, I will not be, but I am dying to play the game, obviously, and I am super, super excited about it. I couldn't be more excited, but I too would be inclined to give CD Projekt RED a pass for this. I mean, again, I understand that production changes. I mean, he talks very clearly in the article. He says when we were putting this together, the new systems weren't even out yet, and when we found out what they were, and we recognized that they didn't have the computing power that we needed them to have, we had some decisions to make. And that makes sense to me. That's logical, and I understand that. But it does seem a little odd, then, to use the awards you won before you made those decisions as a marketing tool. That, to me, feels inappropriate.
Well, I guess that I'll play devil's advocate with you, and I'll say those awards were based on the game mechanics, the storytelling, the open world mechanics that we have introduced in this third version of the game, and that we don't feel, and some of them have even told us the fact that this game doesn't have the same graphic fidelity, tessellation particles, etc., that was on those builds doesn't change what those reviewers thought was good about what they had played.
Well, so would you? I mean, that's I don't know. I don't know.
That's how you can say. I mean, it's like, if you. At what point do those things actually change sort of the fundamental experience of playing the game? Does the draw distance, change?
Yes,
the story
it does.
Experience?
It absolutely does. Well, but that's not. You're not giving awards or reviews of the story experience. They're not the story experience reviews. They're the complete package. And all of those things are part of that package. So, I mean, you could make the same argument by saying, so if they took out a couple of the game mechanics, is that just not a big deal? I mean, if they removed a character, is that a big deal? I mean, the graphics are related to immersion. And yes, draw distance does matter. When you're playing a game that has significant pop-in, you bet your ass it matters.
I think I think that that's very subjective.
Well, certainly it is. Certainly it is. But to dismiss it is also subjective. I mean, I think they are all sort of intangibly linked parts of a whole. And so to say that reviewer or those reviewers or the 56 places that gave them awards it wasn't really the graphics that did it for them. It was the story, I think I think that's presumptuous.
Yeah, certainly true. I mean, I think that, but I think that's the rationale that would go into doing it. You know, especially if they're using, let's just say as an example, I don't know that they won this, but let's just say that they won, you know, best graphics at E3 2013 award. If they're using that in their marketing, yeah, that's cheeky, you know, bordering on sociopathic.
Well, the awards all say things. They don't do it. They all say like official selection, game of the show, best of E3. Those are the kind, you know, I mean, those are the...
Yeah. So I get what you're saying. I have to say that, you know, for myself, graphic fidelity, it's not the most important thing in the world to me. I want it to look good, and I certainly don't want to play the game and be taken out of the experience by graphic problems, but it's not the only thing that's on my mind as I'm playing. So I don't feel as strongly about it as perhaps some would. Now, something I want to come back to that you mentioned, the first thing that I thought of as we were reading this story in prep for the show is I was thinking, I wonder how much of this might be fixed through mods. How much of this could the community come up behind them and take care of? And I suspect that we're going to see quite a few of these things addressed in the PC version through the mod community. You know, since they've released the SDK and they've opened that door for everybody to walk through, I suspect people are going to walk through it. And you know, whether that's you know, whether you want to get into kind of the principled argument about that, which, you know, again, that doesn't really matter.
Whether or not it should fall upon the community to fix it.
You know, shouldn't the developer do that? Isn't that their job? And the community shouldn't have to come behind it? Because, I mean, in the end, it's just, you know, it's ultimately just people exercising free will. Like, you know, nobody's holding a gun to any person's head and saying, you know, create a mod that make this game look better. If they feel so driven to do that, and then they are in turn willing to share that with everybody so that we all benefit from it, you know, that's great. And certainly I will be very enthusiastic if that happens. But I guess that maybe part of the reason that I am not quite as upset about this is that selfishly, I believe that my version of the game on PC will probably eventually get to the point where it looks as good as that 2013 version of The Witcher did, on account of the fact that there's going to be a very enthusiastic mod community most likely supporting the game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's true. I also have the PC version.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I just want to clarify that, because I don't think I really articulated exactly what I meant to say, which is, if you're playing on a console, I think that you pretty much expect that the game is pushing your console about as far as it can, and whereas on the PC, you have that. Yeah, you just have an expectation on the PC that you're going to be able to push things. You know, they're going to give you enough options that you can push things even farther. Whereas obviously that's not really going to be the case here, at least initially.
Right, and I do think when you're looking at a console version, especially from a company like CD Projekt RED, who is primarily been a PC developer,
yes,
historically. I think that you do have you should expect that what you see is representative of, you know, a PC, representative of it running on a PC with, you know, dual Titan X's or whatever, like the high end. They're going to show off the best they can, and so I think as a console owner, you expect that it won't look quite that good, which is unfortunate. But I think it's a reality. But when you're on the PC, I think you expect to have the ability to do that. And it seems that right now you won't. Although I do agree with you, Brent, that I wouldn't be surprised if, just like with Skyrim, you see a very strong modding community that is, you know, that's bringing this. up to what it looked like before, and very likely even beyond.
I tend to agree. One question I just want to ask as we close out here. In light of what we were just saying, do you think that is this a PC issue? Is this only a problem for PC gamers? Do console gamers care as much about this topic as the PC gang?
It's a good question to pose to our listeners. I think that console gamers are participating in this conversation, but my inclination would be that it's PC gamers that are driving it. But I think it's a good question to pose to our listeners and see what they think about whether or not this matters to them. And I'd be curious when you guys post about this. Let us know whether or not you're playing it on the console, or you're playing it on your PC, and what your thoughts are on this issue.
Okay, guys, we are going to hit the road and talk a little bit about some of the games that we're playing. We're not playing if you're Lauren Baumgarten, because Lauren is suffering from some woeful turn of fate with his PC. Lauren, you want to?
It's a true story.
Listen,
and
I just also want to say real quick, it's 7:00 now, and my copy of The Witcher is unlocked, and I could be playing that right now, but I am staying. I am staying to finish this show and listen to you whine about your ganked PC build. Because
did you download the patch already, by the way?
Yes, I've already installed it. It's all good. I just want you to know that I'm here for you.
Not for me, Brent. For the listeners, you're here for the listeners. Yeah, Brent. So it's going to be hard to talk about my games this week with the tears that might be streaming down my eyes as I speak. I played one game this week. I played Wolfenstein: The Old Blood. I'm at about 12 hours now, and I'm up through the beginning of Chapter 8. I believe it has 8 chapters. Mm-hmm. I can say with confidence that if you are interested in these games, so far, while The Old Blood has been good, Brent, it has not been to the quality of the original Wolfenstein: The New Order. So I would recommend to folks that if you're interested in playing these games, I would actually recommend you wait until The New Order goes on sale and try and pick that up for $20 or so, because while The Old Blood is good, it doesn't have some of the humor that I think the initial game had, and some of the sort of self-referential lines that I really enjoyed in the first one. And so I'm enjoying it, but not quite as good. Still definitely worth the $20 in my opinion. But I did not finish the game, Brent, because I discovered over the weekend, much to my very, very, very deep sadness currently, that something's going on with my CPU and my heatsink, and my CPU is not cooling appropriately. It is living at about 70 degrees, and as we're recording is in the mid to high 80s, even with under a 20% load. So my heatsink is not doing the trick, Brent. I have tried everything to repair it in preparation. You and I actually agreed to record early this week so we could be ready to play when The Witcher 3 came out at 7:00. And now I'm not going to be able to play it, Brent, because there's no way that I will not burn up my chip in attempting to play it. So I've got a heat sink on the way, an aftermarket heat sink with a 120 millimeter fan in the mail, but it will not arrive until tomorrow. Jeez. So I cannot play The Witcher 3 in 5 minutes when you and I are done.
Listen, I just want to caution you right now that you may be considering shortcuts. Taking shortcuts to try to ease the wait time between now and when this game comes out. I would like to refer you to a show called South Park, in which one Eric Cartman tries to do the same thing to disastrous results.
I did look up some remedies besides the thermal paste that I purchased, and I am going to, when we get off this recording, I'm going to try using mayonnaise as thermal paste and see how that does.
I'm going to give you a little hint right now as to how that's going to do.
I think maybe a layer of American processed cheese food.
Now that might work. American cheese could work. You might also try yogurt, not yogurt, margarine. Is it margarine? Like Country Crock or whatever that is, because I think molecularly it's like one molecule different, and that's plastic instead of a food product.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, I will not be doing that, Brent, but sadly I will also not be playing The Witcher tonight, but you can bet your ass when I get home tomorrow and I'm able to install. Oh, I see people are popping up now.
Yeah, on
my Steam.
Playing The Witcher.
Playing the game. As if they're listening to us record,
mocking
Brent.
Mocking you is what they're doing.
That's exactly right. As if they're listening to me record. So yes, that's my situation. But next week you and I will be having, I'm sure, an in-depth conversation about The Witcher Wild Hunt.
Just look on the bright side. Even if you don't get this problem wrapped up for a few days and then start playing the game, by the time next week rolls around, the chances are very, very good you will have still played more of this than I will.
Very, very good, because my wife is still in Brazil, I have no dog, and I have all weekend to do nothing but play The Witcher.
There you go. For my own part, what I've been playing this week mostly is Project Cars. Which
yes, I'm excited to hear about this.
I received a gift copy of Project Cars from a listener and a buddy of mine, somebody I've played online games with in the past. I did not specifically ask him if I can mention him by name on the show, so I will just hold off until I have his permission, because I know sometimes people have sent gift copies and stuff and said, hey, like I'd prefer to not be mentioned, or whatever, and that's totally fine. I want to respect that. So since I don't know, I won't say. But anyway, it was you, which is, and it's weird how it came with like that little GIF of roses and a velveteen teddy bear. It was kind of
strange. Did that make you uncomfortable?
A little bit. Not nearly as comfortable as the picture of you posing with the heart-shaped pillow over your. Never mind. Project Cars. Getting back to it, is a very, very interesting. It's a very interesting kind of juxtaposition in the sense that I think that you've got people like me who dig console racers. Traditionally, Gran Turismo is my cup of tea. You got people like me coming from the console side who are really all about racing simulation and a racing game as opposed to a car game. I remember having a conversation with somebody on, I can't remember, PSN, Steam, something, but it's been years ago now. They were asking me what I thought of something or other, and they were saying, well, do you think it's like is it a good car game? And I said, well, I think it's a good racing game. If you're into a car game, maybe Forza is more what you're looking for, that kind of thing. So, as somebody who comes from that background, Project Cars is really interesting because Project Cars is certainly a racing simulator. It's certainly playing in those waters. I think, based on what I've played right now, and I could change my mind about this because I've only played an hour or so, maybe a little bit more than an hour. So my opinion of this could change as I get deeper into the game, but based on what I've experienced right now, I think that Project Cars could eventually become my favorite racing game ever, because of the fact that it has a very intuitive and familiar kind of feeling coming in from like a console racer, but it also has a lot of the tweakability that you would expect coming from the PC side. Now, I don't know that the physics in this game are as complex and exacting as something like R Factor, which, I mean, there could be something even better out there, but to my mind, R Factor on the PC is probably one of the most hyper realistic racing sims that's out there. I don't know that Project Cars is really playing in those waters. I feel like right now it's maybe a little bit beyond like the Gran Turismo, Forza cadre of console racers. I think it's a little bit beyond that in terms of its realism, or at least you can sort of tweak it to be so. Like there's a lot of things that you can tweak in terms of driving assist and physics and that kind of stuff. But I feel it's a little bit beyond that, but not quite in that league of hyper-realistic racing sim. So it's kind of a good sweet spot if you want something a little bit more, but you're not quite ready to... Because, I mean, really, if you're going to play like R Factor, like that's the kind of game that you're going to play when you've invested a couple $1,000s in like hardware racing simulator, wheels, pedal, 3 screens, seat, that kind of stuff. And you don't need that kind of stuff to enjoy Project Cars. However, it is the kind of game that will almost certainly make you want to invest in a racing wheel, because as many of the reviews have pointed out, playing with a controller is unforgiving. It is a game that requires precision, and my Xbox 360 controller, and with my fat little fingers, I am really struggling to reach the level of precision needed to be consistently good in this game. It's really, really challenging me. And I don't mind that. I enjoy being challenged, but at some point I do begin to kind of wonder, like, gee, how much am I going to keep beating myself up over this before I start to think, a racing wheel would make this a lot easier than this controller. So anyway, we'll see how I do over the course of the coming week. But my initial impressions of the game are extremely positive. I haven't done much other than quick races, so I haven't started a career mode yet. I'm curious to try that out, and certainly curious to look at some of the more online stuff. But I'll have to wait and give you that at a later time.
So, Brent, I'm curious. Do you think this game, do you think it's something I would enjoy? Do you think is there enough? I'm not even sure how to describe it. Enough assists or enough whatever for somebody who's not into the super finite detail that likes a more arcadey in general feel to it. Is there enough there for that person as well, or do you think it's really geared at those that are more interested in a sim-like experience?
I think that it definitely leans more sim-like. I've not tried the amateur mode yet, but I would presume that, because when you start the game, you're basically, there's like sort of three options: amateur, intermediate, and pro. And my friend Eric, who's playing the game, he messaged me and basically said, hey, listen, there's some stuff going on with like physics and whatnot that if you need to like get into pro, just start your game in pro so that you have options, you have access to those things. So it's possible that at the lower level, like the amateur level, it is a bit more forgiving and perhaps would appeal more to somebody like you. But based on what I've experienced so far, I think that it is definitely leaning more to the sim side, leaning more towards being a racing game as opposed to being a driving game. Which is how I kind of distinguish between things like like Need for Speed and stuff like that, and Gran Turismo, or like the early Forza games as opposed to the later Forza games, which were more racing focused.
Gotcha. It's awesome, man. I'm glad you played it, and I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying it. I can't believe that you've said that it might become your favorite racing game of all time. The only thing
that's lacking right now is scope. Like that's the only thing. Like coming off of a Gran Turismo or Forza, you like every track that they raced in the 2014 F1 series. You're probably going to be able to find those tracks in those games. So you can go in and race those tracks. Any car that that you could probably hope to own yourself, or would want to own yourself, you can probably find in those games. That's the only thing that's missing from this game. Is just it's limited in scope. It just doesn't have as many tracks, doesn't have as many cars, but what is there is excellent.
That's awesome, man. All right, should we hit the throttle and ride off into the sunset, Brent?
Go ahead. What do you got? What do you got this week?
In the Into the Sunset section, Brent, I have a little trailer, and I can't remember who posted this on the old Outlaw Gamer Society, but it's a trailer for a game called, the full title is Evoland 2, A Slight Case of Space-Time Continuum Disorder, which I just think is a fantastic title. And it's from a company called Shiro Games, and it is it's being designed for PC, Mac, and Linux. And what I thought was really interesting about this game, Brent, and I think people should just go check out the trailer, is the way that it progresses through time, through video games, through the history of video games, basically.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Within the game itself. So you start off and you're playing like this 8-bit stuff, and it harkens back to very specific games. So you're playing some 8-bit stuff that looks a lot like Zelda, for example, and then you end up progressing through time, and you're playing in a more kind of beautifully rendered. It must be, I don't even know, 32-bit or whatever, the fighting games like not Street Fighter, but like Street Fighter and that sort of thing. And it kind of progresses through time. It alludes to what was the? I can't remember the name of the really popular game where you were the airplane that was just flying up all the time. There's been several games, but there's one in particular I'm trying to think of. But it kind of progresses through the history of video games as you're playing it. And I thought, well, this is a brilliant idea. And I don't know, Brent, have you ever... I'm sure there's another game out there that has done this, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. And I think that there's a lot of room to play around with that. And it would just be fascinating to progress through video game history and playing a game, especially games that I remember like Karate Champ, Punch Out, Donkey Kong.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot
Gauntlet,
here that looks familiar to
Tron.
me. Oh yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I think it's a super interesting game. I encourage people to check out the trailer and see what you think. Game's coming out for, I think it's $19.99 when it comes out. It's $17.99 if you pre-order it. I just thought it was a really interesting concept.
This looks fascinating. I mean, this looks so spot on fun. And this has been announced for PC, Mac, and Linux. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you bringing that to my attention. This is the first I've seen it, but man, oh man, oh man, that looks fantastic.
Indeed. All right. What do you have, Brent, on your Into the Sunset?
Not a video game, but a little bit of related fun that I just can't keep to myself anymore. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I was going back and forth a little bit with Tony last night. And that is because Tony has turned a corner in his life. You see, as I posited on Twitter, your life can be divided into two eras. The era before and the era after you have seen Danger 5. And Tony Grice, I am happy to say, has now turned that corner. And we now live in the world where Tony Grice has experienced the mega awesome epic totality of win that is Danger 5. For those of you who have no fucking clue what I'm talking about, Danger 5 is on Netflix. It is a show born from the land down under, and I imagine that if you live in Australia, you probably have a much better idea of having already been in on this. Danger 5 is... Okay, I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to give you the setup the same way it was given to me. Danger 5 is done in the style of a 1960s spy adventure TV show or movie, in the vein of things like The Avengers, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Our Man Flint, things like that. Kooky, weirdo, 60s spy stuff. So the particulars of the show are about a team of international spies called Danger 5, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. It's set in the 1960s, and their mission, every episode, is to stop the Nazis and kill Hitler. Now, if you're the kind of person that says, that doesn't make any sense because the Nazis and Hitler weren't around in the 1960s, and that's stupid, stop listening now. There's nothing here for you. If you're the kind of person that says, there were no Nazis or Hitler in the 1960s, and that's hysterical, then you need to watch this show. Because that sort of sensibility is what's here. And it's fucking brilliant. It's ridiculously funny.
How have I never heard of this?
It's relatively recent. It's not been around that
2012.
long.
There's 2 seasons. It's 2012.
Well, I guess I should stipulate it's not been around that long here in the States.
Oh, maybe that's why. I had never heard of this, man. And as you're talking, I looked it up on Netflix, and this looks freaking awesome.
Jesus Christ, watch it. Jesus Christ, watch this show. The first season is amazing. The second season, and in addition, that's the thing, in addition to being really, really smart and funny, the second season is really, really ballsy because they completely change the formula. In season 2, it leaps ahead 18 years.
Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it. Well, don't ruin it. I want to watch it now.
All right. Well, I'm just going to warn you. Season 2.
I want it to be a surprise.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. But I'm just going to warn you. It's really going to fucking be a surprise. I mean, it's really going to be a fucking surprise when you get to season 2.
I want it to be. Dude, I'm going to, since I can't play the damn Witcher tonight,
I'll watch this instead.
I think I'm going to fire up Danger 5, dude. I think
you will not regret it.
It looks brilliant. And the reviews on Netflix, I think the first review on Netflix says, I cannot explain to mere mortals how ridiculously awesome this show is.
I mean, that's it. That's it. Like once you've experienced the sit down gun, like when you get to the sit down gun, like that's, and I'm telling you, when you get to that scene, you will be struggling to control your lower bowel movements.
All right, dude. I don't want to hear
anyway.
anymore. We're going to talk about this next week because I'm going to watch it this week. That is awesome.
So anyway, if you've not watched Danger 5 and you have access to Netflix, please do yourself and the world a favor. Watch Danger 5. That is my Into the Sunset this week.
Consider it done. All right, guys. With that, we're going to wrap up our show and call it a week. Brent's going to head off to play The Witcher 3, and I'm going to go sob in the corner. As usual, we want to hear what you guys think about everything we talked about tonight, whether it's Danger 5 or Evoland 2, Project Cars, Wolfenstein, The Old Blood, whether or not you think CD Projekt RED is getting a pass for the downgrade from what they showed in 2013 of The Witcher 3. Of course, up in the garage, we talked about the new Batman Arkham Insider Let's Play Dual Play, the announcement of Assassin's Creed Syndicate, Crysis, the Analog Edition, and the delay of Tom Clancy's The Division. We want to hear what you guys think about these topics and anything related to gaming or gaming culture. As usual, he is Brent Adams. I am Lauren Baumgartner. And remember, you don't stop playing because you get old. You get old because you stop playing.